Hello Experior, and welcome to the very first interactive training session on the kitchen table presentation. I'm Dror David, and for the next little while I'll be taking you through the steps on how to manage a successful kitchen table presentation when sitting with your clients. We will be covering the client introduction, PowerPoint presentation, and expert financial analysis, in addition to some tips and tricks on how to increase your closing ratio. Remember, no two kitchen table presentations will be the same. It will all depend on who you're sitting with and what their needs are. Ultimately, you'll need to cater to each individual meeting, but this training will give you a general outline on how it should be done. Enjoy! When meeting with your clients, there are a few important points to remember. Number one, we do not want to meet at coffee shops or restaurants. We would love to meet people in their homes, and worst case scenario, in the office. We'd like to meet people in their homes because that's usually where they have all their policies and statements and where they feel the most comfortable. Both partners should be present. I learned the hard way, and if both partners are not present, you're probably not going to close a deal and you're not going to do a good job for the clients. When sitting down with the clients, you want to set aside between 60 to 90 minutes to go through the client introduction, the PowerPoint presentation, and the E.F.A and investment profile. You want to make sure that you're booking multiple appointments every evening. You could book a 5:30, a 7, and an 8:30. Make sure they're all in the same area and that you map it out properly. Set strong appointments. You can give them a 48-hour cancellation policy, and if they don't call or text you, you're showing up at the door. Always complete an E.F.A and make sure you pick up all policies and statements. Never leave the first appointment without booking a follow-up appointment within a week. Never ever go back without commitments. Make sure you tell your why. Why did you get involved in the industry? And why did you get involved with Experior? This should be done after the client introduction section. On your first visit, make a friend if they aren't already your friend. Build trust, have a conversation, crack some jokes. Always go for the little yeses. In sales, you want to make sure you get those little yeses so that the next time you go and see them, they're already used to saying yes to you. Be direct, be honest, and be sincere. And if you're going out onto the field with your field trainer, make sure you edify them. That means make sure you big them up and tell them how great of a leader they are and a bit of their track record in the industry and with the company. So, Mr. and Mrs. Client, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me. What I want to do is I want to ask you a few questions, because here at Experior, what we do is, we build custom-made financial plans for people. But before I can do that, I need to ask you some questions. In the client introduction page, you're going to get to know your client and see whether they're a good candidate for the business or not. And you're going to get to know them a little bit more to see how you can start building their plan. Remember, try not to ask too many questions so that you don't jeopardize a sale. I want to talk to you a little bit about what you're doing now. What does your career consist of? What do you do? Ask questions like, so what do you do? Did you have to go to school for it? Have you always done this? Okay, great. And how long have you been doing that? 7 years. Wow. Okay. Very nice. You must really like it. And which of the following is most important to you in respects to your career? Is it the salary? Is it the flexibility? Is it the advancement? Or is it the significance? The flexibility? Okay. Good. What do you like most about your career? You like the people? Okay. Awesome. I love the people that I work with, by the way, from my CEO to my executive director to my colleagues. I love the people I work with, so I can totally concur with that. In the career info and financial goals section, you'll see whether they're open-minded to learn more about Experior and what it could possibly offer to them. And what do you dislike most? Because there's always something that people dislike in their job. So what is it that you dislike most? The hours. Okay, yeah, perfect. The hours, yeah. In my old job, my 9 to 5 job, I used to hate waking up in the morning, driving in traffic for half an hour, 45 minutes, and then having to do the same thing on the way back. So again, I totally can empathize with your situation. Talk to me a little bit about your financial goals, right? What is the most important to you with regards to your career? Is it earning more income? Is it protecting your family? Is it getting out of debt, as quickly and as efficiently as possible? Or is it retiring financially secure? And it doesn't have to be one, it can be all four, but what is most important to you? Earning more income, okay, perfect. And retiring financially secure or early, right? Yeah. And again, I'm pretty good at showing people how to do that, but again, I'm good, but I'm not as good as saying, yeah, I'll help you retire tomorrow. Okay, we do have to work a little bit. Okay, and based on what you're currently doing with the career that you have right now, is it going to allow you to reach your financial goals? Is it going to allow you to earn more income in the future? And is it going to allow you to retire financially secure or early? You don't know. Okay. Okay. Now, let me ask you something. If I can put together a program for you that's going to allow you to reach all of your goals and all of your dreams, would you consider putting that program together? You would, obviously, right? And who wouldn't? Okay, good. In the retirement dream life section, ask a lot of questions. Tell them about what your dream life looks like and make them tell you theirs. This is going to make for a better conversation and keep building trust between you and them. Good. Awesome. Now, in retirement, talk to me a little bit about what would retirement look like? Okay? What kind of home would you have? Would you have a 2-car garage? Would you have a 3-car garage? Would you live in a townhouse? Would you live in a bungalow? What does the house look like? A bungalow. Okay, perfect. I would love a bungalow. I love the coziness of bungalows. I'm not really a big fan of the 2-3-car garage. I love bungalows. What kind of car would you drive? Would you drive a sports car? Are you going to buy yourself a little toy Corvette? Would you drive a Honda Civic? What kind of car would you have? A Lamborghini. Okay, awesome. Who wouldn't want a Lamborghini? Awesome. Tell me, would you want to travel anywhere? Is there anywhere particularly in the world that you want to go that you've never been before? Or maybe a vacation spot that you'd like to go to? Aruba, awesome. I love Aruba. I used to go actually years and years ago with a couple of friends of mine. I love it. It's absolutely beautiful there. The food's amazing. It's totally safe. The weather's incredible. So that's a great spot. Awesome. Let me ask you something. Would you ever go back to school? No? Okay, that's what I thought. Most people don't want to go back to school, but hey, you never know, right? Awesome. Is there any kind of charities that you'd like to support? Do you want to give back to anybody? Sick kids? Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. Okay. And, after traveling and, driving around your sports car, what kind of hobbies would you have? Would you do woodworking? Would you, keep playing sports with your buddies? What would you do? What does that look like? Baseball. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Now, in order to live this kind of life, in order to have the Lamborghini, to have the bungalow that you want, to travel to Aruba once or twice a year, maybe, support a charity, do you know how much income you would need annually to live your retirement dream life? About $80,000? Okay. Okay, beautiful. Now on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how important is it for you and your family to retire financially independent? If not 10, if it's not super, super important to you and the number one priority, why not? It is a 10. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Now, what steps would you be willing to take in order to help make this a reality? Would you save 10% of your gross income? Would you invest in an automated forced savings plan? Would you develop a monthly budget? Or would you want to earn some extra income? Save 10% of your gross income, okay. Or earn extra income, fantastic. We can talk about that in a couple minutes. Once you've completed the client introduction section, tell your clients your why. Make sure you have a strong why and don't take too long. Mr. and Mrs. Client, let me tell you a little bit about why I got involved with Experior. So, Mr. and Mrs. Client, before I get into the PowerPoint presentation on who Experior is, let me tell you a little bit about why I got involved in the industry. When I was a young boy, I remember my parents meeting with a financial advisor, and they were putting money away for me to go to school. When I go to school, not if I go to school, when I go to school. And I asked them, Mom, Dad, who was that? And they said, that's a financial advisor, and we're putting money away for your education. I said, that's great, that's awesome. When I turned 18 and I wanted to go and use that money, a lot of that money was gone to fees and taxes and penalties. And I didn't know what happened, and my parents didn't know what happened. It was okay because I got through school successfully, I had a part-time job, but I felt as if somebody went into the pockets of my parents and took their money. My parents are very, very hardworking people. They've been working their whole lives. You know, they still do because they want to. But I felt that we got a little bit robbed. And so it left a little bit of a scar on my brain and on my heart. Went through university. I actually studied kinesiology and geography, went to teacher's college, never ended up getting a teaching job. Then I got a full-time job when I was 26. And I remember having this great idea that I was going to make X amount of dollars, and I got my first paycheck, and I saw all of these different deductions. CPP, EI, group RSP, group benefits, and I didn't know what that meant. And I went to my general manager and I said, what does all this mean? And he said, Dror, I don't know, I just kind of max everything out. And that wasn't good enough for me because, again, I felt like someone was taking money out of my pocket. 4 years ago, my longtime family friend, who's known me since I was a little boy, came to me and said, I want you to come and check out what I do. And there's a couple things that I can promise you. I can promise you that, number one, I'm going to teach you all about your finances. Number two, I'm going to show you how to make a lot of money on your own time and how to run a business. And number three, you're going to be able to help people like your parents and like yourself so that whatever happened to you guys doesn't happen to anybody else ever again that you love and care about. And I said, okay. And I took the opportunity, and here I am. And that's my story. I want to go through a little bit about what Experior consists of so that you can kind of get an idea of why we do what we do and how we do it, okay? So, Experior here, we are a 100% Canadian company for now. Actually, it's just been announced that we are going to the United States, so it's a super, super exciting time for us. We are governed under FSCO, okay? So FSCO is the governing body of anything to do with financial services, okay? Whether it's when you're investing or whether it's you're putting some protection in place for your family. We do represent several different insurance companies, which I'll show you in a second. We also do investing through our mutual fund dealer called Cart Wealth Management. And on the other side of the spectrum, we can also help you with your mortgage. So whenever you are ready to buy a house or you want to renew your mortgage, we can help you with that as well. So these are just some of the companies that we work with. Do you recognize any of them, Mr. and Mrs. Client? Great, yeah, you got Sun Life there, you got Manulife, you got Desjardins, right? Very, very prominent companies in the industry. There are three main companies that we typically use, okay? Number one being La Capitale. La Capitale is actually our sponsoring company. Okay, they've been around since 1940, and they are the 5th company by revenue and 9th by life and health premiums in Canada. Another great company is Industrial Alliance. Industrial Alliance is actually the company that we do our RESPs with. So what my parents did back in the day, they actually handle that. And they actually were just voted as the #1 company in seg fund sales. Segregated funds are a type of vehicle for your investments. And the third one is SSQ. SSQ is a Quebec-based company. They've been around since 1944. I'm sure you've heard of the Montreal Canadiens in the NHL. They actually handle the group plan for the Montreal Canadiens. And I'm sure you've been to IKEA in the last couple months. They actually just took over the group plan for IKEA. So really, really good companies. Maybe you haven't heard about them before, but they are actually really, really good companies that we use. On the investment side, here are just some more of the companies that we use. I'm sure you recognize some of them, right? You recognize the banks, TD Mutual Funds and CIBC, right? Do you see Fidelity there? Fidelity is actually the #3 largest investment company in the world. Another prominent company there is Franklin Templeton Investments. Franklin Templeton is actually the #1 largest investment company in the world. And again, in addition to some of the bank funds that we use as well. So really, we have a lot of options for you. What do you think, Mr. and Mrs. Client? Are Canadian families struggling? Yeah, they are, okay? And there's a couple of statistics here that we've come up with, but 3 that really hit home to me personally. First one being is almost half of Canadians say they're living paycheck to paycheck. That could be for several different reasons. The second one is about half of Canadians surveyed indicated they have $1,000 or less saved for an emergency. And that could be anything. That could be a new car. That could be a new fridge. It could also be if we get sick or hurt and we can't go to work. What do we do in that situation? And then number 3 is more than half of all workers have less than $25,000 in savings and investments for retirement. So we're just not putting enough money away. Again, for several different reasons, which I'll talk about in a second. What Smart Money did in 2001, Mr. and Mrs. Klein, is they took a survey of about 100 people that worked from ages 25 to 65, and this is what they found. 54% of Canadians were dependent. So they weren't working at the age of 65, but they were dependent on either a family member, a friend, or the government, which we all know doesn't provide you with enough funds in order to live a proper life. 36% were still working. Have you been to a Walmart in the last couple months? Yeah, everybody has, right? What do you notice when you walk in? Who's the person that greets you? A little old person, right? Definitely over the age of 65. There's 2 reasons why they're there. Either because they have to be, because they didn't save enough money for their retirement, or they just hate their spouse and they don't want to be at home, right? 5%, unfortunately, is deceased, so we can't really do anything for them. However, there is a lot of wealth transfer that is actually going to be happening in the next decade. There's about $30 trillion of wealth transfer that's going to be happening, okay? So a lot of money from these deceased people, or people that are retiring, that is going to come over to the next generation. 4% is okay. They have a net worth of about $1 million. And 1% is very wealthy. They have a net worth of about $5 million. Now, I just want to point something out to you here. This was taken in 2001, Mr. and Mrs. Client. What do you think? Do you think that these statistics are better or worse? They're definitely worse, okay? The question we ask ourselves, though, is why do 90% of Canadians fail when it comes to their finances? So the people in the 36 and 54%. Why does that happen? What do you think? So number 1 is there's no financial education, right? If you think of all of the schooling that we've gone through, anything that you've studied, did anybody ever sit down with us and tell us what an RSP is, what a TFSA is, why we should invest, how we should invest, and where we should invest? Nothing like that. Even people who study finance, right? I sat down with 2 MBAs in finance and I taught them 5 new things. So there's just no financial education. Number 2 is there's no financial game plan. Mr. and Mrs. Client, do you play any sports? No? Okay, that's fine. Do you cook? Great. What do you follow when you cook? A recipe, right? You don't just throw a bunch of things together and just hope for the best. You follow a recipe so that you can cook up a good meal, right? And the third thing is there's no financial coach. I'm an athlete myself. I play soccer, right? So when I go to practice, I have a coach that gives me an education, how to kick the ball properly, how to pass it properly, what have you. Before every single game, we put a game plan in place so that we can ultimately win the game that we're going to play. Well, here we're playing the financial game. And this is what we do. Because most people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. So Experior provides you with an expert financial analysis designed to assist you in reaching your short-term and long-term goals. And this is what we do. We build you a custom-made financial house. How would you love for me to build you a custom-made house with the drywalls and the light fixtures and everything that you want custom-made for everything that you ever dreamed of? How would you love that? Great. The first thing we need to start with is the protection, okay, or the foundation. Any building that you walk into, you always start with a foundation. So if there's ever a gust of wind or some rain, your house isn't going to topple over. What does that consist of? That consists of disability insurance, critical illness insurance, and some life insurance if God forbid you go to work and you're not home anymore. Critical illness and disability is if God forbid you get sick or you get hurt and you can't work. Like it or not, Mr. and Mrs. Client, we are money printing machines. If I could give you the peace of mind that if you didn't go to work, but I would still be able to cut you a check so that you can maintain your lifestyle, wouldn't you love that? Of course, anybody would, right? The second thing we look at is debt elimination. Do you have any debt, by the way, Mr. and Mrs. Client? Okay, great. Let me just make a note of that. Perfect. And the last thing we look at is investments and savings, okay? In order to meet our short-term and long-term goals. That could be investing for your kids' education, that could be retiring, that could be buying a new house. Do you have any investments and savings, by the way? Okay, great, that's awesome. Because we have different products and services at our arsenal, we can literally customize your house with exactly what you want. I'd like to take some time now, with your permission, to ask you a few questions so I can start the blueprint for your financial house. Is that okay with you? Great. Give me a second and I'll just get the package here. What I want to do now is break down the steps and make sure that we are following the process as efficiently as possible so we're able to build that trust with the clients and make sure they really understand why we do what we do and how we do it. Make sure to take notes and practice, practice, practice. What we want to achieve with this slide is to introduce who Experior works with and that we are a 100% Canadian company and that we are governed under FSCO. Depending on the province that you work in, you may be governed under other governing bodies such as AIC or ICBC. In Ontario, we're governed under FSCO. When introducing some of the companies that we work with, you want to start giving the client a couple facts about the companies so when you come back to the second meeting, they're not questioning the company that you're using for their plan. For example, Laka Patel, been around since 1940, is the 5th largest insurance company in the country, and is actually our sponsoring company. This is a great way to start building trust with one of the companies that we work with. Do your research and make sure you find some fun facts about the company that you're going to work with. Another company is Industrial Alliance, a company that we do a lot of our RESPs with and a lot of investments with. Try to find some facts about them, like they've been around for 126 years. SSQ, always nice to mention the fact that they work with the Montreal Canadiens because they have the group plan with them. Another fun little fact is they actually just took over the group plan for IKEA. Mr. and Mrs. Client, have you ever been to an IKEA in the last couple months? Well, great. Guess what? SSQ handles their group plan. Been around since 1944 and is the 6th largest insurance company in the country, based out of Quebec. These little tidbits of information allow the clients to build trust within you so that when you go and present it, they know who you're talking about. Not to take away from any of the companies that are out there, but these are some of the companies that we typically go with. When presenting this slide, again, you want to present some fun facts about some of the fun companies that exist out there. For example, Fidelity, being the number 3 largest investment company in the world. Franklin Templeton, being the number 1 largest investment company in the world. In addition to the bank funds that we use that everybody is familiar with. When presenting this slide, make sure not to jump ahead. Ask your clients, are Canadian families struggling financially? And wait for the answer. What I typically do is I click through all of the different stats here, but I really pick 3 that hit home to myself. Number 1 being is that almost half of Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck. That could be for several different reasons, as I tell the clients. Number 2 that really hits home to me is about half of Canadians surveyed say they have less than $1,000 or less saved for an emergency. Use some examples. It could be for a new car, a new fridge, maybe some brakes on your car, or maybe you can't work anymore because you got sick or hurt. How are you going to maintain the lifestyle that you've made for yourself? The third fact that I use is more than half of all workers say they have less than $25,000 in savings and investments for retirement. I use this fact because I'm of the younger demographic, and a lot of young people are just not saving enough for retirement like their parents used to. So if you're talking to a younger client, you can use this. You can also use this with older clients so that maybe you can get in after with their kids and make sure you're putting a plan together for them. When getting to this slide, make sure you don't click ahead too early again. Make sure that you emphasize the fact that in 2001, Smart Money did a survey of about 100 people who worked between the ages of 25 and 65. Click slowly, go one by one. 54% of Canadians at the age of 65 are dependent. And use some examples. They're dependent on family, friends, or the government. 36% are still working. This is a great way to make the clients laugh and keep building some trust with them. Mr. and Mrs. Client, have you walked into a Walmart in the last couple months? Who's the person that greets you at the door? A little old person. 2 reasons why they're there. Either because they have to be, because they haven't saved enough for retirement and they have to be working, or they hate their spouse. You'll get a bit of a chuckle out of them and build more trust with the client. 5% are deceased. Try not to make this point too morbid. Unfortunately, Mr. and Mrs. Client, we can't help these people, but we can help the next generation that has acquired that wealth. 4% are okay, and really try to emphasize that that $1 million is their net worth. And 1% is very wealthy with a net worth of about $5 million. They probably have about 2 or 3 financial advisors. You never know. When you click next, you'll get this question. Why do 90% of Canadians fail when it comes to their finances? Ask your clients. Ask them to tell you what they think. There's 3 points here that you want to try and get from them. Really emphasize that financial education is super important. We've all gone through the educational system that hasn't necessarily taught us how to put a proper plan together. Mention to the clients that the first thing that you're going to do is educate and empower them to make the right financial decisions for themselves and for their families. Number 2, there must be a game plan. Try to use a sports example. Ask your clients, Mr. and Mrs. Client, do you play any sports? And if they don't, great. Do you cook? Use the recipe analogy. When you're cooking, you need to follow a recipe. You don't just throw a bunch of stuff together. Having a financial coach is super important. When we were little kids, we had our parents as coaches to teach us how to walk, or how to eat, or how to shave. If you're a sports person, you have a coach that puts together this game plan for you and teaches you during practice. They give you an education. Why is it any different with a financial game plan? You need to have a coach or an educator to help you with all this. And finally, what we do and how we can help. Mr. and Mrs. Client, most people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. You don't need to read this word for word, but get acclimated with this slide because this is the last slide before you ask for permission to start asking them questions to put their plan together. Experior provides an expert financial analysis designed to assist you in reaching both your short-term and long-term goals. When talking about protection, it's super important that you emphasize that the protection is the foundation of a financial house. Use the analogy of a regular house or any building. Mr. and Mrs. Client, you're not going to start a building with the windows or the walls or the lights. You're going to start with a foundation first to make sure that if a gust of wind comes or rain comes, your house isn't going to topple over. When talking about debt, this is a great segue to start introducing the expert financial analysis where you're going to ask some questions. Mr. and Mrs. Client, we help people get out of debt as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And the last part of the house, again, where you can start introducing the expert financial analysis questionnaire, is we show people how to invest and save in order to meet their short-term and long-term goals. This is where you can ask the clients if they have any investments or savings and where you can start asking them for their statements. What you'll see at the bottom there, we offer a variety of products and services designed to help families become properly protected, debt-free, and financially secure. Mr. and Mrs. Client, with all of the products and services that I have to offer, I can literally customize your financial game plan to meet your needs and to help you achieve your short-term and long-term goals. That's it. The PowerPoint presentation is complete. At this point, you can ask the clients for permission to start asking them questions so that you can start building their financial house. When doing the E.F.A, have some fun, have a conversation. Don't be so robotic. Go through the E.F.A, but make sure you're asking conversational questions where as you're talking to them, you can start getting some of the information like their kids' names, what schools they go to, do they play any sports? And then you can maybe start getting into, hey, by the way, do you have an RESP for them? Great, let me just make a note of that. And you go back to your E.F.A and you make some notes. Great, so Mr. and Mrs. Client, this is the E.F.A. This is what I'm going to use to ask you some questions now and get some information with your statements and your policies so I can start building your plan together, okay? This is my draft, all right? So there's going to be a bunch of scribbles and everything like that, but essentially this is what I'm going to use to input the information into the computer so I can start building your plan, okay? Remember in the PowerPoint presentation where you ask the clients if they have any debt? Don't be afraid to skip to page 4 where you can check off if they have any debt or not. You did mention that you don't have any debt, which makes my life a lot easier and makes your life a lot easier. So let me just mark that down over here. Okay, perfect. And you also mentioned that you have some investments right now. Can I grab those from you? Great, thank you very much. I'm just gonna stick these in the back. And when I come back for our second meeting, I'm just gonna make a copy of it and I'll give you back the originals. Is that okay? Awesome, thank you. Okay. You already know their first name and last name, but if you want to have a little bit of fun and you're not sure exactly how to spell their first or last name, ask them. If you're talking to a woman or you're talking to a couple where there is a woman present, have some fun. I'm sorry, I don't usually ask a woman how old she is. I apologize, but I have to know your birthday. You're going to get a bit of a chuckle and you're going to keep building that trust with them. And your name is so-and-so, great. And just remind me of your birthday again. November 15th, 1986, perfect. And Ms. Client, how do you spell your name again? Just remind me. Okay, great. And I'm sorry, I apologize. I don't usually ask a woman how old she is, but can you tell me how old you are and when your birthday is? Yeah, okay, perfect. Okay, no kids now, but you might think about it, right? Okay, so I'm just gonna mark that off. Mailing address I have. In the mailing address and contact info, again, have some fun. If you're not exactly sure how to spell their address, ask them. Ask them how long they've lived there. Ask them if they have a mortgage. And then you can skip to the next part for the mortgage info. And guys, by the way, what's your email? Don't worry, I'm not gonna send you any spam or anything like that. It's just, you know, when I start filling out the application, I can have the email ready to go. Okay. Perfect. And guys, remind me again who you're working with. What's the company name? ABC Company? Okay, beautiful. For the employer information, you probably have a good idea of this because you already asked them in the client introduction. But just clarify who they're working with, how long they've been there, and if they like what they do. The next question I have is, I need to know approximately how much on average you guys make a month. And this is gross, so before taxes, before deductions, all that stuff. Because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a percentage of that income as your budget for your plan. Okay, so approximately how much are you guys earning per month? 4,000 and 5,000, perfect. Okay, and you guys are obviously paid on a monthly basis. Awesome. Section 1 income sources, it's important that we know how much the clients are earning every single month, because you're going to take a portion of that income to start building their plan. Reassure them that this information is completely confidential, but you need to get an idea of how much they're earning so you can start building their plan. If you can get 2 of the last pay stubs from them, that's perfect. And you guys normally receive a tax refund. You have an accountant that you work with. If you don't, I can certainly refer you to someone. That's not a problem at all. Great. Now, the company that you work with, do they currently offer an employee-sponsored retirement plan? No? Okay, that's fine. Section 2, employee-sponsored retirement plans. What does this mean? Is there a matching contribution program? Do they have a pension plan at work? Some will, some won't. If they do, make sure to get statements. Mr. and Mrs. Client, talk to me a little bit about what does retirement look like for you? And please don't say you want to retire tomorrow because I'm good, but I'm not that good, okay? But you know, what does retirement look like to you? How much would you like to retire with every single month? And at what age would you like to retire? Great way to have some fun with the client also when you ask them, what does retirement look like for you? And you can pull some of the information that you've gotten from the client introduction page. Again, mention that please don't say tomorrow because I'm good, but I'm not that good. You'll get a bit of a chuckle out of the client and keep building that trust. Most people have not been asked when they want to retire and how much they want to retire with. Most people will say between $4,000 to $6,000 a month at the age of 65. Make sure to mark that down. 65, okay, beautiful. That's typically what people say. And how much would you want coming in today's dollars in retirement? 5,000? Okay, beautiful, 5,000. That's great, awesome. Is retiring well important enough that you would commit to setting aside money every single month? This is one of the first parts of starting to get the commitment. If they say no, then you're not going to talk about investments. If they say yes, move on. And is retiring well important enough that you would commit to setting aside an amount every single month? Yes? Okay, perfect, great. And if I can help you retire with $5,000 a month at the age of 65, obviously you would implement that plan, right? Perfect. If I can help you retire at age 65, would you implement that plan? Yes. Great. Move on. Good, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these numbers now and I'm going to take into consideration things like inflation so that I can show you how much money we need to put away and how much of a return we need to try and attain in order for you to meet this goal at retirement, okay? On the side there, beside yes and no, do include the inflation rate that we're currently sitting at. I always like to increase the inflation rate a little bit more because I always say to the clients, I'd rather you have more money than less money. And I'd rather be ahead of the game. Perfect. I have your statements. That's awesome. Now, are you guys contributing anything monthly to these accounts? $100? Great. Let me just make a note of that. Now, let me ask you something. If I can show you a better solution for what you have now, would you consider moving it over? Okay, great. That's awesome. Other assets. Do you have other assets? Real estate, jewelry, fine cars. This is anything that will increase in value that will be available to clients in retirement or sometime in the future. Is there any other assets that are of value that you will have at retirement that you know about now? Any real estate, any jewelry, any fine cars, anything that's going to be increasing in value over time? Nothing? Okay, great, no problem. Other retirement assets. Here we talk about RSPs, TFSAs, or even non-registered accounts that the clients may have in investments. Make sure you get how much they're putting away monthly and where the money is invested also. This will allow you to do a proper comparison and make sure you go back with a better plan for them. And in terms of any savings or checking, any non-registered assets, like I said, checkings or savings or non-registered accounts that you have that aren't necessarily invested in. It's not that I necessarily want to touch it right now unless you have, $100,000 or $150,000 sitting aside that we can do something with. About 10 grand aside is what you guys have? Okay, perfect. Let me just mark that down. Do you have a will? Most people will not have a will. You'd be surprised. If we were to show you an affordable option, would you like to have one? Most people would say yes. We have an amazing partnership with Legal Shield. Make sure you take advantage of that. Now, very, very important, as one of the foundations and one of the pieces of the protection that we should have is a will. Do you guys currently have a will? No? Okay, perfect. Now, if it's affordable, would you like to get one? Because I can show you how to get one. Yes? Okay, great. I'll make a note of that. Now, in terms of the protection, a couple questions I need to ask you here. Do you guys smoke any tobacco? No? Okay, great. That's awesome. Any marijuana, and it's okay, I'm not going to report it to anyone. It's going to depend on which company I'm going to go with. No marijuana? Perfect. Okay. Is there any reason why you wouldn't qualify for any kind of life insurance? Is there any family history, any health history? Are mom and dad completely healthy? Are brothers and sisters completely healthy? Everyone's good? Perfect. Makes my life much, much, much easier. Life insurance coverage. Make sure you ask the clients if they are healthy, if they're on any medication, if they smoke tobacco or marijuana. Is there any reason they wouldn't qualify for life insurance? It could be medical history of their own or of family members. Make sure you ask that and make notes at the bottom so that you can go back and do the proper research with the insurance companies that we work with. And is there any kind of group coverage that you have at work right now? About a year's worth of income? Okay, perfect. Let me just make a note of that. And what would happen if you were to leave your employer? You would lose the coverage? Okay, perfect. Let me just make a note of that. If they have group coverage at work, make sure they know how much they're paying and what the coverage is, and whether they lose it if they leave the workplace or they get to transfer it. If they own personal life insurance for themselves, that's great. Make sure to pick up policies and go through it briefly so that you know how much they're paying monthly and if they're overinsured or underinsured and if you can do a better job for them. If they don't, make sure you ask the proper questions of why they don't have any protection for themselves. Now, do you have any policies yourself? You do, right? You gave them to me here. Okay, I'm just going to make a note of that. And do you feel that you're insured enough, or overinsured, or underinsured, or you're not sure? Okay, no problem. And I'm just going to make a note of the policy that you have here. This is the face amount. Good. Okay. And why did you buy your existing plan? For the protection? Okay, great. I'll make a note of that. And let me ask you something. When was the last time you spoke to the agent that gave you this policy? Never again? They gave it to you and that was done? Okay, that's fine, no problem. Most people would like their families to be taken care of. So if you were to ask the client, if you were to die prematurely, instead of saying, do you want your, you can say, obviously you would want your debts paid off, your mortgage paid off, your kids' education covered, and your funeral and final expenses covered, right? Mr. and Mrs. Client, if you were to pass away prematurely, if you were to go to work tomorrow and not come back, obviously you would want your debts paid off, your mortgage paid off, your future kids' education paid off, and any kind of funeral and final expenses, right? Okay, great. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take into consideration here $30,000 for each of you for your funeral and final expenses, because we all know that, funerals can get super, super expensive, with the invitation and the food and everything that it entails, it can get super expensive. Okay? A good number to account for funeral and final expenses is about $30,000. Looking forward, if anything was to happen, is there any sum of money on a monthly basis or a one-time benefit that you would like to leave behind to the survivors? 100,000? Okay, great, no problem. Awesome. Now, if I can put together a plan that will improve your current plan, would you change it for the better? Yeah? Okay, great. Instead of saying, are you interested in disability, health and dental, critical illness, you can say to the client, what I'm also going to look into for you, Mr. and Mrs. Client, is some critical illness and disability. Because I don't know if you know, but we're actually more prone to getting sick or hurt than dying. Awesome. Now, what I'm also going to look into for you, Mr. and Mrs. Client, I'm going to look into some living benefits. Because I don't know if you know this, but we're actually more prone, significantly more prone to getting sick or hurt than we are of dying. Okay, so I'm going to look into a couple products here that is some critical illness and some disability, okay, if God forbid you can't go to work. If you're talking to a young person or a young couple, they probably aspire to buying a house or buying a condo. Ask them when they'd like to do that and make sure you incorporate it into your plan. Section 9 is a great way to ask them for their mortgage data and to see if they're paying for mortgage insurance. This is where you can give them a great comparison of why life insurance, critical illness, and disability could potentially be a better product for them over mortgage insurance that they pay with their financial institution. No kids right now, so we don't have to worry about that. Any other goals and dreams? What are you looking forward to in the next 3 to 5 years? Are you looking to buy a house, looking to buy a car? You're looking to buy a house? Okay, great. And how much approximately are you looking to purchase a house for? About 500,000? Okay, great, honest. Awesome, that's good. Great. You guys don't currently have a mortgage, or do you have a mortgage on the place you're living on right now? Great. Let me just get some information from you here. Okay, awesome. You've probably already made note of this, but if they do have debt, make sure to be as detailed as possible, asking them how much debt they have, if they're making the minimum payments, and what the interest rate is there. In Section 11, make sure you refer back to why you asked them how much they're earning on a monthly basis. Because experts say we should be budgeting 10% of our gross monthly income for our financial plan. Now, you said that we don't have any debt, so that's good, makes my life a lot easier. A couple more questions for you here. Now, experts say that we should budget around 10% of our gross monthly income for financial and retirement planning. Now, 10% of your monthly income is $500, okay? Is this an amount that you would feel comfortable setting aside every single month, right? Do you have an extra $500 every single month that you can put away for your plan, which is going to consist of the protection, the debt consolidation, which we don't have right now, so that's fine, and the investments and savings. Is that a comfortable amount? After calculating 10% of their gross monthly income, ask them if this amount is an amount that they are comfortable with using on a monthly basis, and if they have this available. If not, that's okay. Make sure to ask them what they are comfortable with. Yes? Okay, great. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use $500, not a penny over, to start building your plan. And if you ever want to add more, you just have to give me the go-ahead and we can do that, okay? Again, make sure to ask those commitment questions. Mr. and Mrs. Klein, if we can show you a better program for what you currently have, would you change it for the better? Or, if we can put together a plan that will protect your family and is within your budget, would you get the protection? Now, if when I come back and I offer you a program that could improve your current savings, debt situation, and your insurance needs, would you implement and follow that program? You obviously would, right? If it's better for you. Great. The final and most important question you want to ask your clients. Mr. and Mrs. Client, if when I come back and I offer you a program that could improve your current savings, debt situation, or insurance needs, will you implement and follow that program if it is better for you? 99% of people will say yes. Great. The next question you're going to ask them, and this will help you with your closing ratio, is Mr. and Mrs. Client, what would you need to think about in order to put this plan in place? Let me ask you a couple questions. I'm going to go back. I'm going to do some work for you, okay? And I'm going to do some research. I'm going to come back with a plan and make sure you understand everything. What are some things that you need to think about in order to implement that plan and put it together and go forward with it? Tell me some things. One of the first things they might talk about is price. You want to make a note at the top of the page, think about price. That's great. Here's what else I'm going to show you. I'm also going to show you price, value, and benefit. What are you getting for what you're paying for? One of the biggest objections that we get after doing all this work is, I have to think about it. This is a great way to get over that objection in the first meeting. Okay, so you need to think about the price, no problem. Right? Anything else? The benefit, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to show you the benefit. And I'm also going to show you, Mr. and Mrs. Klein, I'm also going to show you the value. Okay, what are you getting for what you're paying? Okay? That's great. Let me just make a note here. Is there anything else that you need to think about? Nothing? That's it? Price, value, benefit? Perfect. Okay. Another big objection that we get is, I need to consult with someone. Don't be afraid to ask the clients who they would need to consult with in order to start putting this plan into place. And write it at the top of the page. Some people want to consult with their mom, their dad, their boss, or their neighbor. What you can say is, great, no problem at all. Why don't you bring them to the next meeting? This will do two things for you. This will increase your closing ratio, and it will most likely get you another client because the people that they're consulting with find so much value in what you do, they're probably going to want you to take a look at their stuff as well. And the last thing is there anybody that you would need to consult with? Mom, dad, brother, sister? Your mom and your dad? Perfect. Why don't you bring them on to the next meeting? Right? And we can all sit together because, you know, a lot of the information here might be maybe too complicated, right? So I'd love to explain to them and for them to hear it out of the horse's mouth, right? Anybody else you need to consult with? Nobody? Okay, perfect. Talk about your fee for service. Reassure the clients, don't worry, Mr. and Mrs. Client, I'm not going to be charging you any money. You can keep your checkbook in your pocket. My only fee for service is referrals. Would you be willing to give me 5 referrals each if you find benefit in what I've done for you today? It's a great deal, isn't it? Last but not least, my fee for service, don't worry, you can keep your money. I'm not going to charge you anything, but my fee for service is referrals and recommendations. Mr. and Mrs. Client, would you provide me with 5 referrals each if you like what I can implement for you? Is that a fair trade instead of you paying me $400, $500, $600, $700, right? Once they've committed to that, take that 5th page, rip it off, and hand it to them. And tell them to just start thinking about some people. They don't need numbers or anything like that. When you come back and they like what you've done, They can start putting down the numbers, and then you can send them the follow-up text that they can send to their referral list. You can do that for me? Great. Let me give this to you. This is the referral sheet, okay? And just start thinking of some people, okay? You don't have to write their numbers down. Just start thinking of some people that you believe will benefit from what I'm doing for you now. And then the next time I come, if you're super happy with it, then we can get their phone numbers. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna send you a text message that you can send to them. And if they agree to talk to me, great, I check them off and I'll give them a call within 24 to 48 hours. If they don't worry about it. I scratch them off and they never hear from me again. Is that a fair trade? Perfect, awesome. A rule of engagement. Do not leave the first appointment without booking a follow-up appointment. And you typically want to do it within a week of meeting with the client, most likely same day and same time. Because if you met with them on day X at this time, they're probably going to be available again the next week at the same time. Send them the email invite and you're good to go. I need about a week to work on this. So it is Tuesday today. How about same time next week, same day? Does that work for you? Perfect, awesome. Let me just send you the email invite here and I'm gonna mark it down here. Perfect, okay. Last section is super important. Take the E.F.A and turn it to the clients and reassure them that everything that you have just discussed is completely confidential and will be staying between you and the clients. Make sure they sign and date and you're off to the next section. Second last thing here, I just need you to read this portion over, and this is basically saying that I am not a mortgage broker. We didn't discuss any kind of rates. All the information here is completely confidential. Rest assured, I'm not going to be sharing this with anybody, and that all of the information here is between you and I, okay? So if you just want to take a minute, just sign there and date. Great, thank you. Let me just make sure I have everything here. Okay, awesome, that's perfect. Now there's one last thing I need to do with you, just so I can get an idea of how risky or risk averse you are. I just need to ask you some questions here so that I know how to invest your money, okay? This is the final part of your E.F.A. This is where you get to know if your clients are risky or risk averse, and will help you put together an investment program that they're gonna like. Great, so you came out to be a growth profile. So, Mr. and Mrs. Client, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to actually use this outline here, okay, in order to start picking some funds so that we can start making your money work for you in a more efficient manner, okay? Great, I have all the policies, I have all the statements. That's awesome. Do you have any questions for me before we end here? Nothing? Awesome, great. Well, I have everything. I will see you guys next week. If anything changes, please do let me know. Send me a text message or give me a phone call. And if I don't hear from you, I'll see you same time next week. Thanks. And that's how it's done, ladies and gentlemen. You're all set. The 3 steps to a successful kitchen table presentation from start to finish. Remember step 1, client introduction. This allows you to uncover the goals and dreams that the clients have and if they are a candidate for the business. Step 2, the PowerPoint presentation to introduce Experior and its partnering companies to the clients. Step 3, information gathering in order to begin the blueprint for your client's E.F.A and solidify the second meeting and the close in addition to getting referrals. Don't forget to subscribe to Jamie's YouTube channel for more content. I'm Dror David. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video tutorial.
Hey, if you like this video or any of the other videos that I have on my channel, stay tuned. We have so many more coming, but I want to make sure that you're in the know, that you know when they're coming. So please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and make sure you hit the notification bell.